Hey YouTube. In this clip I want to take a look at DJI's D-Log, and there's been some criticism around this, and we see some issues with it, so I wanted to have a closer look at this. I'm comparing it with the RX100 Mark IV, which should be a very similar, if not the same sensor, and I've set them both to standard 0, I think f5.6, ISO 100. And you can see the images are very similar the way they come off the sensor, and I think I've only taken some color temperature out because the RX100 is very warm. So the same with the lumetri scopes. You can see that they're nicely filled. They use the entire spectrum from 0 all the way to 100 IRE. They both look very similar. Of course, you have some clipped highlights and some crushed shadows. But that's on purpose, to demonstrate what SLOG can actually do. So I try to expose down the middle, which I think worked out quite well here. Yeah, so similar starting point for both. Now on the Sony we have SLOG2, and on the Phantom 4 Pro we have the infamous D-Log, and in the spectrum you can immediately see a big difference. The SLOG uses 100 all the way down to, I think, 7.5, which I think is an NTSC topic. I think it's expected, but I'm not sure yet. Maybe somebody knows. And D-Log only uses something like 12 to, 75-ish, barely 75 IRE, so it uses a lot less of the available data space. You can also see that in the image. It's very gray looking, and obviously they have the flat look, but the Phantom 4 image looks unusually gray. Now I try to grade both of those. For the Sony I have a dedicated LUT SLOG2 to Rec. 709. For the Phantom I've also found one, but I think it wasn't intended for the Phantom 4 Pro, and then I did some manual tweaking. The result, I think, is the spectrum of the SLOG is much nicer filling out than the D-Log, and the image itself looks much better. Take a look at the sky, for example. On the Phantom side, it's still pretty much completely blown. On the RX100, I was able to recover, quite a bit of color actually in the sky. And remember, it was completely blown out before. So I think SLOG really does its job well here, whereas D-Log I think is already showing some limits, especially in the direct comparison, especially in the sky, for example. So what do I take away from this? I think this is just one exercise, and I'm by no means experienced with SLOG and color grading, all this stuff, but this at least sort of proves the point that the limited use of the data space on the D-Log does result in a picture that is less usable. Well, at least in this example, and I think it's expected if you think about it. You squeeze more data into a smaller data space, and then you go back and post and stretch it out again. It's by default gonna suffer a little bit more, and then also you see that the SLOG actually did retain some highlights that were blown out before, and was able to bring back some information, whereas the D-Log really wasn't able to do that. We have a gray sky, and I try to push it more, and it would barely turn white. It was just gray to begin with. So clearly missing some data there. I think, yeah, Raptorman made a video recently where he showed that if you have proper lighting with a scene that's not quite as contrasty, that data space is enough, 15 to 75 or whatever it is. But the question is, is that an argument for the validity of D-Log? And I think it's not, because why would you choose a codec that by default restricts the data space that is used, even though you may not need at this particular point in time the additional data. I think by default you can only suffer if you use D-Log, and from my point of view at this point, I think it's something I'm not going to use. Yeah. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts, share them in the comments, and thanks for watching.